Council, members of the staff and members of the public, thank you for being here this evening for our first regular council meeting of the month of May. I would ask at this point if anybody has a cell phone or any other electronic device, if you wouldn't mind putting it to silent so that it doesn't interrupt our proceedings. And I'd like to let you know that all public comments made during this meeting are audio and video recorded and shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with our town's retention bylaw. And if you need more information about that bylaw, you can contact the clerk's office. I want to thank those who have joined on live stream tonight. Appreciate you being here as well. If you want to follow along, the council agenda has been posted for about a week, so you've had can have an opportunity to look at the reports that are on that agenda. I'm just going to take a moment and talk a bit about the flooding that some of our neighbors have been going through, and we're very happy that they're getting some relief. Our colleagues in Ottawa and Renfrew County and the District of Muskoka levels are down. And when I spoke to colleagues last week, they told me that the one thing that the flooding did one thing that happened is that it brings the community together, and the neighbors were supporting neighbors, and it made me reflect today that wouldn't it be nice if we could create a community where people supported each other like that all the time and not just in the case of an emergency. So we'll open the agenda this evening, and we have our first item on the agenda is the open forum. And the open forum is the opportunity for people to speak to items that are on the agenda. And we have one person who's signed in today, and that is Karen Kessler. And she wants to speak on the environmental sustainability policy. Karen, whenever you're ready, welcome.
Changes happen for people when they're able to actually follow their good behaviors and what they want to do. And to have an entire bureaucracy that is a town allowing people to do that and make their ecological footprint smaller is so important. And often you hear from the IDA, because we're very passionate about making sure things don't happen, we wanted to take the opportunity to say that we were really pleased and support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kessler. That's really nice to hear. So the next item on the agenda then is the approval of the agenda. We have had some agenda repair required this evening. The first is that the delegation from the farm market group has been postponed. They aren't going to be here tonight. They will be here early in June. And so I apologize because I did advertise ahead on the Mayor's Minute that was going to be on tonight. So I do apologize for anyone who has tuned in to see that. Next, we've added an item, 6.2, which is a delegation request, which we will be hearing shortly. And finally, there is a one-item closed session meeting that will follow announcements this evening that we'll deal with, and apologize to the group for a last-minute add-on, but it's time sensitive, so we'll be dealing with that this evening. So could I please have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Waters, all in favor of the agenda as amended? That's carried. Next item is any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I just have to look it up. I believe it was item F1, declared pecuniary interest as an employee of Moosehead Breweries who may be a sponsor for the Wingding event that's happening. Thanks.
Thank you for that declaration. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and petitions. So actually that was the item that was withdrawn. That was the Farmers Market Annual Report. The next one then would be Dan Taylor. Dan's the Economic Development Catalyst, and he's here this evening to give us our quarterly update from Economic Development. Mr. Taylor, whenever you're ready.
Me. Several of you attended a session we had the other day where we unveiled our wall, so you'll recognize some of the slides, and if you hear some of the same messages, my apologies, but it's our ongoing theme. And really the reason for this slide in particular is the theme of our economic development work is transformation, in that we're working towards transforming our economy. And you'll hear us talk about jobs of tomorrow. We're not trying to be fancy or anything like that. Really what we're looking at doing is delivering high wage, high quality jobs. The jobs of the tomorrow part, really what they refer to is many jobs today are under threat of being displaced by robotics and artificial intelligence and outsourcing. And we don't have a crystal ball, but there are ways and means to see what kind of jobs are at risk, and we're focused on the ones that are least at risk. So just to help you understand where we're going. At the end of the presentation is a quick sort of 1.5 minute video. The theme of our economic development work, as you're aware of, is entrepreneurship. And to quote Mayor Dolan in that video that you'll see, she says, if they succeed, we succeed. So our role in economic development is to help the business community succeed, which helps our community succeed. So I think that's actually a great theme. I talk about our economy in stages. So if typically Innisfil was really known as a rural agricultural and cottage community, and our economy reflected that. And over the last 30 years or so, we've evolved into kind of this suburban commuter community. And the economy reflects that, meaning we're serving, residents, but, maybe not in the best way economically, meaning we have a lot of good businesses here, but we don't have enough good businesses for those jobs of tomorrow we're talking about. And that's really where we want to head. To understand transforming, so it took about 30 years to transform from a rural agricultural to a suburban. Where we want to head is also going to take a while. It's not an easy task, and it will take some time. And so we just want folks to understand that as building a building doesn't happen overnight, neither does transforming an economy. Okay. So where do jobs come from, right? Today, jobs come from startups. 90% of all jobs created in the Western Hemisphere come from startups that are 5 years and under. And that's the area that we are focused on. And the good news is a lot of those jobs of tomorrow come from startups, especially if we focus on building our economy to attract those groups. And we mentioned, so our biggest challenge today is that we've evolved into a commuter community. And unfortunately, 82% of all our residents drive elsewhere, Barrie and south to GTA for jobs. And one of many challenges with that is that if you're spending 2 to 4 hours in your car every day, you're disconnected from the community. So other than the obvious that we want to have great local jobs here, we also want to build our community and have an engaged citizenship. And part of that is by having local jobs. Okay. The good news about startups is that they create jobs. The bad news is there is a high failure rate. And so we're not going into this blind. So there is some risk focusing on startups, although there's not really a whole lot of other alternatives. On occasion, communities do have success bringing in big opportunities, But you can't bank on that day in and day out. So this is a balancing act of, yes, we want big opportunities if we can get them, and we are talking to some of those big opportunities now, but we also want to spread our economy out broader. So how you help startups succeed is you actually build an infrastructure. We've been calling it an ecosystem, or now we're really focused on, a startup support network. And that includes mentorship, possibly bringing in angel or other venture capital financing and training. We've got relationships with Ryerson, with Henry Bernick Center, et cetera. And that's how you reduce the failure rate or increase the success rate. So that's a big part of our work that we've started this year and that we're building on for the next several years. So in economic development, you can really only do 4 things. One is to have a vision. So our vision is to build the startup or entrepreneurial economy. You can help businesses that are here stay, so that's retention. You may have heard that in economic development terms. Expansion. 65 to 80% of all economic development comes from retention and expansion. Typically, fortunately, I've had a lot of success in attraction, so you want to have some kind of balance there, but you can help businesses that are here expand. We've done that in the past here historically, and we'll continue to do that. And then attract. And when we say attract, all we're really talking about is attracting new opportunities. So they may be from businesses and residents that are here already, starting new ventures. That's great. And it may also be bringing people from maybe other parts of Simcoe County, and primarily GTA. That's primarily our target market. We're not really looking globally per se, because there's plenty of opportunity close by. I call it concentric circles. So the greatest opportunities for almost anything are within, close proximity to where you are. I think the main message I want to leave with you on this is that Innisfil and our department are highly proactive. So a lot of communities are reactive in how they handle economic development. I think historically in our evolution we have been, and that's probably why our commuter economy was not as robust as we want it to be. So we're highly proactive, and with that, hopefully will come a lot of successes. Innisfil doesn't come without its challenges, and we have a couple that are pretty significant, and we believe we are going to be making strides. And I think Council has heard this before, but I think it's important to understand because it contextualizes things. So we know about the commuter challenge, which is one. Our biggest challenge is space. So we have, at the moment, some limited issues on industrial lands and space, and perhaps even more of an issue is commercial space. So we virtually have almost no commercial space, office space, to bring new companies here. And we're working on solutions, and I'll share some of them, but collectively, Council, our leadership team, the community, we need to solve that, or we're going to have a growth challenge, which is we're not going to be able to grow because they're not going to have places to put people. So how are we solving that? So we're solving it several ways. With respect to industrial lands, we already have a plan in place to take the lands that we have and service them with wastewater treatment. So that will happen in a few years' time, and that will help. We do have some existing lands that are currently serviced, not with wastewater, but with other services. And the lands that are available, if the right opportunities come, meaning they don't require wastewater, which many opportunities don't, then we can help them that way. So just to be aware of that. With respect to commercial space, there's several things that we're working on. So we have found and have first right of refusal right now on a space in Innisfil where we're going to be launching what we're theming Innisfil Accelerates. So that's going to be a place where there's going to be some office space that we make available to our targeted startups, and the startups are the ones that have the highest growth. So that's where our marketing is heading. There's going to be some co-working space to help startups launch, and there's going to be support programs, mentorship, bringing in the Ryerson training, Henry Bernick Center training, et cetera, to help those startups succeed. So that's super short term, and that will help. Last year, we brought a proposal forward to council to look at our in-home, work-from-home policy. And for a variety of reasons, that didn't pass. We are going to be bringing that back sometime this year. And I think part of the challenge was it was too broad. We're going to bring it back with a really tight focus on office worker usage. More to come on that, but all that to say is that's probably our most immediate opportunity to bring more space on board, because the space exists already, and it's a policy change versus building. Building takes 18 to 24 months, plus you need the investors who are willing to risk and want to build, which leads us to our third thing. So I think, as you're aware, we're working on a downtown Alcona visualization project right now. We're about 3/4 of the way through it. And all that really means is we've taken our planning policies, which are very progressive and community building, and we've literally visualized them into 3D animation fly-through. And the idea is for us to work with existing landowners who may want to develop and or who may want to sell, developers that are here, and also to attract developers that may want to come here to build space. And the space really would likely look like retail on the main street with wonderful quality of life, pedestrian, nice traffic flow, et cetera, office space, and then, condominium housing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our sort of 3-stage approach right now. That's sort of our short and our medium-term solutions. We mentioned about how we're helping entrepreneurs. We're also working on a market readiness project, which basically means we've gone in to the investment community and into our own organization, and we're looking at what are we doing well, what areas can we improve upon, and again, that's about 3/4 done. Once that's done, then what we'll be doing is working with the internal team primarily and going, great, here's where we're strong, let's keep building on that. Here's where there's opportunities for us to serve the private sector better. Let's work on that. So that's how do we get better at helping investors invest in Innisfil, okay? And so through all those plans, we'll need, council's ongoing support, as well as our leadership team support. And I'm happy to say so far the feedback sounds good, that we have everybody's support, which is wonderful. Some high-level activity, just to let you know what we've been up to over the last quarter. I mentioned the Alcona visualization. So this is all foundational work. This is stuff that's got to be done in order to make change, to make transformation, to attract investment, to build more office buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So as I said, that's almost complete. We started that in January. The investment readiness I just mentioned. We are doing a lot of marketing towards entrepreneurs, and on average, we get about 1 consultation or inquiry a day. So literally like every day of the week. So we've done 90 consultations over the last 90 days in the first quarter of the year. And we've now found and are in the midst of acquiring our co-working acceleration space to throw a harder stake in the ground to build on entrepreneurship. We've also tapped into what seems to be a real need or interest in the community, which is women entrepreneurship, so a subsegment of entrepreneurship. We did 2 events that attracted 400 folks, which is huge for a community this size. Like, it's huge. So all that means is we've identified a need. There's a need to build community. Women entrepreneurs want support, they want help, and they want to network, and they want to meet each other. And so we're facilitating that. And we also worked with Startups South Simcoe, which is a partner of ours, on 2 other events with 250 people. I mentioned Ryerson. We have two programs that we did with Ryerson. We did a female entrepreneurial boot camp in the fall, and we put about a dozen folks through an intensive entrepreneurial training with Ryerson. And then we put on a broader, that was female only, and then we put on a broader youth entrepreneurship program where we brought in about 24 23, 24 folks through a boot camp. So this is where you take entrepreneurs and you help them get better at what they're doing to increase their chances of success. And just more as an FYI, and we get attrition out of that. People drop off, and that's okay, because what we're looking for is not the cream of the crop necessarily, but those that are the hungriest, or those that are going to go through the program and have the greatest chance of success. With respect to marketing, we're still in our early days of trying to understand what kind of entrepreneur in particular is in the region and what kind would be attracted to our community and what our messages are. We're using a lot of digital marketing, which allows us to get data, and then we talk to people. I mentioned that we had like 90 consultations, so we get feedback, and I'm just gonna say, so we use our gut and the feedback. So we're using a combination of both. I think that's going to be an ongoing process for quite a while, but the good news is it's working and it's helping us understand our market better. Networking. So we're going to show a quick little video here, and then I'll wrap up with a final slide.
The Small Business Accelerator is an acceleration program that we build to provide local entrepreneurs and business owners with the tools and resources they need to succeed.
Innisfil really wants to invest in entrepreneurs because that's what the future is going to be for employment in our area.
It's really important because you need to grow new businesses. You need to help the businesses that are there succeed.
It's amazing. I mean, I grew up here in Innisfil, so the fact that this town has started this, I think, is incredible.
I think it's a great program, and I think it's really important for businesses here. And I know because I market these businesses.
If they succeed, we succeed. So we want Innisfil to promote, we want to help them promote small business and grow their small business and mentor them and create jobs for people and create a better economy for all of us.
Great, thanks. So just to wrap things up, so our key issues that we're focused on are industrial lands. There's a plan underway. We probably need to work tighter with the province as those changes happen so that we can accommodate businesses that do dry, which is not the wastewater solution. And there's probably other modular green and new technologies that allow us to bridge the gap in the interim. I think you heard where we're heading with commercial space. We have three solutions that we're working on at the moment. Our own space, which is very focused on high-tech startups. We'll be bringing a work-from-home policy that will, if council approves it, will expand the number of folks that can work in a home, which will theoretically free up commercial office space that we don't have already. And then third, we will be taking our downtown Alcona visualization to the marketplace to seek investment to get more buildings built to expand our commercial space. I think the key thing for us in entrepreneurship is we're building the startup support network. What our vision is right now, and it seems, I just want to say it's materializing, is I think by default, by the work that we're doing, this is quite advanced work, meaning very few rural municipalities in Ontario are where we are today, let alone where we're heading, which is great news. We see ourselves being the leader in Simcoe County for the startup work that we're doing. And so we're going to start positioning ourselves as like the place in Simcoe County. So now it's not a 36 pop piece of work and activity, it's a $500,000 pop piece of work and activity. And I think because of our proximity to GTA, that really allows us to do that, and the fact that we have teeth and we're doing all this stuff. So we'll keep you posted on that, but that really seems to be part of our marketing and our positioning. Yeah, and then as our market readiness plans wrap up, we'll be implementing that to improve our processes and to make us an even more welcoming business environment and municipality for investors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Questions and comments? Councillor Fowler.
Just a quick question, a clarification, if I may. I've heard through certain sources that you're looking near the GO station to build this location where you want to draw in the seed businesses. Is that still being considered, or are you looking at multiple locations?
Sure. So, I mean, there's so much going on here. So I didn't really touch on that today. So the municipality has put out an RFP entitled the Mobility Orbit that looks at greenfields, a significant size greenfield site centered around where the GO station would be. And that would be a brand new modern community. So what I just shared with you now, imagine that on steroids, meaning that would be a large 10 to 25 year development that would see that region grow. And I believe our vision, which we're at the early stages, would be to have it be a very modern community that has culture, economy, diversity, connectivity, connections within and to places in Innisfil as well as to the GTA.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. Recently, I've been following one of the things facing small business, and I think this is where we have to talk to the development industry, is when they're building this kind of commercial space for people to rent to begin their companies. The rents are increasingly getting to the point where one company cannot exist in that 1,000 or 1,500 square space. There's an example, 2 weeks ago, a Starbucks is closing in a very trendy neighborhood in Toronto because they can't afford the rent. There's a Tim Hortons closing in that neighborhood because they can't afford the rent. And just currently working with another gentleman in the area, in the Barrie area, the rents that are being charged in some particular areas, Park Place, that are like $55 a square foot. A simple restaurant is costing $15,000 to $40,000 a month just to rent. So if we can work with the development industry, and how do we keep these rents affordable so someone can start a small company or get 2 or 3 companies into one building? How do we work with them? And then you've got your taxes on top of that and your rent. So it's almost not sustainable to have one independent company working in one building. And that's becoming more and more prevalent and unfortunate when you talk to the Barrie renters who have businesses that I've been meeting with. It's all foreign ownership. And there's really nobody to reach out to speak to the landlord because they have nothing to do with us other than they own the building. Yeah. So the agency they work through really don't care. So we need to work, if we're gonna do the GO train area, there's a name for that mile that we had earlier, we sort of specified that mile. We've got to find a solution that makes the rents affordable, or the tax system that we implement as a corporate tax on small business, we've got to work with, I don't know, subsidizing it or finding some break in that area before they're going to be successful.
Yeah, I think building on, what we see as a differentiator for Innisfil, this idea that we are a very innovative community, we will need to seek out innovative solutions. And we have some other larger, medium to longer term projects that I could go on and on about what we're working on, but agreed, absolutely. And we're looking at some solutions for that.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. Currently in Innisfil, we have a wastewater allocation issue where everyone seems to be wanting upfront money to get that wastewater allocation. Is there any way we could leverage that, that problem into an advantage where those companies or those developers who are willing to build into their development's commercial space, which allows for the low rent opportunity that that the Deputy Mayor is talking about. Any way we could leverage that into our decision making in terms of who gets wastewater allocation? I know it's a big ask, but just something I was thinking of.
Yeah. So wastewater is not my area of expertise. Maybe Tim from planning might want to touch on that a little bit.
Thank you, Dan, and through your worship, I'm not sure if I want to be known for wastewater, but that's okay. Yeah, so there will be, staff met today actually in the preparation of an allocation report for council that speaks to the current allocation that we need to come to grips with the new plan until that plan expansion occurs. So I've heard your comment is very valid, so what we can do is we can include that in the report still and maybe have some debate about that when it comes to council later in May.
Any others? I want to thank you for your presentation. I accept the fact that we're a growing cosmopolitan municipality. However, I don't see agriculture as our past. I see it as a partner in our community. One of the things I love the most about Innisfil is that it is urban and it is rural. And I think that's a big bonus. I think that the urban people love having the rural landscape. And I think that the rural people like having some of the services in the urban center. And some of our biggest businesses and employment opportunities are with our agricultural community. And they are the success and probably the reason we're here today. And I know with your background, in Prince Edward County and agritourism, I know you know that. Also, I want to tell you that your comments about us being a leader, particularly with some of the proactive programs, the boot camps that we're putting on, I don't think I've been at an event anywhere. I was in Collingwood, I was in Barrie, where both staff from those municipalities and members of those communities came to me and spoke so highly of the programs that we're offering here, and many of them had attended. So it was really great to hear. It made me very proud of what we're doing here, and I thank you and your team for that.
Great, thank you. And if I may, Your Worship, again, I mentioned there's so much going on. So what I did not make clear is as we're sorting through our branding and positioning, when I was referring to rural, I was just talking about the evolution of the economy. I understand the value of rural here for sure. That's part of how we are going to package and sell Innisfil, is that we are still very much a rural agricultural four-season lifestyle economy that, quite frankly, the blend is the innovation and the new and the traditional and the old and the spaces and the ag. And so that's what makes Innisfil. We just haven't articulated that in the brand yet. So totally agreed.
Thank you, sir. So we have a recommendation to receive the quarterly update, moved by Deputy Mayor Davidson, seconded by Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? That's carried. Next is a delegation from Elizabeth Brasseur regarding the staff report that's on tonight's agenda, DSR-081-19. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brasseur, and I'm here today with my husband, Paul, and we're asking that we would be exempt our property at 721 Innisfil Beach Road from the moratorium so we can build our retirement home. In March 2017, we began talking to Brian, he's at the office here, about demolition of our cottage, and he sent the permits for the demolition and the building permit to let us know that we could proceed. We then asked what were the steps needed to do so, and so in the summer of 2017, we had our water and electricity disconnected off our cottage, and we also had the survey done. Our plan was to put our home in Stouffville up for sale, and then we could build our retirement home. This summer, our home didn't sell, so we had to wait till spring 2018, and we sold our home and we began the process. In October 2018, we also were in contact with Trish, the development coordinator, regarding the costs we needed to pay to the town to build our home. And we are currently renting in East Gwillimbury until our home is built. We went to the town office to ensure our property was residential on the advice of our builder, and that's our Lawrence here. He represents our builder, and he told us that we should make sure that it's residential, and I was told that it was. So we began the process of getting the blueprints done and have currently invested over $20,000 into the process of building our home. My mother lives at 723 Innisfil Beach Road, and the family has owned the property for over 50 years, with my aunt owning the adjoining properties behind us. They're on Hastings. So it used to, my mom and her sister bought the property off First Avenue Baptist Church over 50 years ago. So this place has had a lot of wonderful memories. We're asking that we could be exempt from the moratorium and be able to build our retirement home, as we've been in process to build this since early 2017. We understand that it must be built within 5 years or a building charge will be applied to it. We would appreciate your consideration because we love Innisfil and we want our retirement area, this area to live in. So, and also we don't now, because our cottage is off the property, we can't even use it as a cottage now. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from Ms. Broussard? Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will have further comments when we do get to that item on the agenda, but I have been in communication with Elizabeth's mother, Anne Marie, for several years, having been a councillor for Ward 3. And as Elizabeth said, this is a family compound that has been in the family for 50 years, and actually between the two sisters actually goes between Innisfil Beach Road and Hastings. And the Elizabeth they've knocked down some of the old little cottages, the structures. So right now it's just fenced off where Elizabeth wants to build, which faces Innisfil Beach Park. And her mother's has one of the original cottages just beside it in the adjoining lot. And I think that, just to stress that there's a lot of history here in the family. It's not someone that's moved to the town. And also the fact that Elizabeth and her husband are aware that of the item on the agenda tonight and the future vision of Innisfil Beach Road and the potential of what will be beside her in 2 to 4 story buildings.
Thank you. Anyone questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. Understanding that what the town has planned for that area, if we were to give you an exemption, 20 years down the road, it may be, how will you feel about having those large commercial buildings around you? So that's not going to be what you want it to be. It might, right now it will be, but down the road, how will you feel about it then? I guess is my question.
We're fine with it. We're fine with it. We know that communities grow, and so even we live in Newmarket right now, and there's always construction and stuff going on all the time. So we're aware of that.
I want just further on that point, though. I want you to imagine that a typical house is built back, 50 feet or 20 feet or anything, or something from the road. Now envision, and commercial properties get to build right to the property line. There is no side yard setbacks typically in commercial zoning. So now you have to imagine a 4-story building built right to the sidewalk on this side of your home, and a 4-story building built right to the sidewalk on the other side of your home, creating a bit of a I don't know what you want to call it, a tunnel, or I'm concerned that that you understand what that might look like or how that might feel as far as, and that, you know, when those applications come to the town, and I have greater confidence that it won't be 20 years. I think it'll be, you know, 5 to 10 year time frame, but again, that depends on market and the economy and everything else. But I just wanted to,
We're aware.
You to understand that.
We understand. And we would even sign something so that there wouldn't be a problem, you know, in the future, that we would say, you know, that we would never come back on the town or anything.
Okay. Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. My concern is that, and I face that only at a bar, is the neighbors complain about the noise. If, let's say, one of these commercial establishments were bars across from you because it's a park, nightly entertainment, patio music, and someone complains, you'd basically have to sign a waiver that you won't complain and be calling, because there will be that noise carries. And that's my concern. Are you prepared with that in less, probably 10 years?
So, yes, I'll, if with council's concurrence, is it all right if the Brasseurs builder representative?
Husband.
Oh, husband, I'm sorry, please. He's the builder. Okay, I'm confused.
She never gets that mixed up.
Sure. Absolutely, Mr. Brasseur.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth's husband, Paul. According to what you were talking about with the sound barrier, it's been like that every summer down there for 30 plus years, so it's used to it. I walk up my door right now, and there's a building beside me. I'm used to it. Everywhere you go to, you just, in the city, buildings, are, living beside one is no different than driving by one each and every day, so it's no different. The only thing is being acceptable for us. It's fine, because we planned on doing this for over 30 years. We thought the property was commercial when we first owned the property, but we found out it wasn't. Then we said, like I said, we found out you guys were submitting to be a commercial again. But with all the plans ahead of us, what we had planned, no matter what's going to happen, it's going to be our retirement home. We're going to live inside. We're in our 60s. Who knows? 10 years from now, we may not be here. In the meantime, we're going to fulfill our retirement. But like I said, we never go anywhere. The only place we've ever gone to is here in Innisfil. So this is our home, no matter how you look at it. We're just trying to make it permanent. That's all we're trying to do. We understand. I know, like, everybody develops. If it wasn't for development, you wash aside, like everybody else would do. So I just hope you accept it. We know what's coming. That's what this is all about. We know what's coming. We just want your allowance for us to live there.
Thank you. And just for procedure's sake, and I'll let Councillor Waters speak, so we'll accept this for information, and then we'll move to that. When we get to that part of the agenda, then council will debate it. So just so you understand what how this will be working.
Yes, it's called follow the proper steps.
Yes, if you could stay, because I'm quite sure there'll be some further debate at that point. But right now, the opportunity for you to speak is now, so I'm going to ask and to answer questions, because when we get to that item, that part of the agenda, then it's only council's turn to debate. But I will ask Councillor Waters to ask a question.
Can I also mention that the builder has something to mention about the procedure?
Absolutely.
Lawrence Benz?
Councillor Waters, did you want to ask your question first?
I'll let him speak.
Okay,
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Your Honor. I was approached by the Brasseurs back in 2017, and as they were considering to build something, and we had some discussions about what they had in mind and so on. They indicated back then that they thought they'd heard, or they thought there was some kind of a confusion in terms of what the zoning was and so on. So I said to them, go down to the township, get all the, the town, get all the information, make sure you understand what it is that they are offering, come back, and you know, I'm not trying to build you a house on any circumstances, but if it's the right thing for you to do, and they give you the right information that says, yes, it is residential and so on, I'd be happy to help you. And that's kind of what happened. So they came back to me about 6 months later. 6 months later, after they'd spoken to the town, got the information that they believed to be credible and real, which was that it was a residential lot and you could go and build. They came back to me, and then we started a work process. In the meantime, they had organized to get rid of the residents that they had on that property existing. They moved that to their mother's lot and attached it to her mother's lot because her mother's living there. She's what, in her early 80s? She's 85, 86, but you know, I mean, she theoretically could be there for another 10, 15 years, who the heck knows. And Elizabeth expressed the interest of wanting to be close to her mother. So anyway, they allowed this building to go onto her mother's place, knowing that they have 5 years to rebuild on that property. And then they came to me and so on and so forth. So the idea now, we didn't really hear the information that this meeting about for the moratorium, we only heard about in a meeting this past Monday. Actually, sorry, this week on Monday. Elizabeth went to her mother and said, "Have you heard anything about this?" And she said, "No, I didn't know anything about it." So this is completely taken by surprise to the Bergers. And anyway, this is very difficult for them because this is their retirement. They've been planning on this for a long time. They're wonderful people. And you know, they have limited funds too. They're not unlimited with their resources. So they've been planning based on how much they're going to spend on this house and so on. They understand that this development area will change over time. It won't happen overnight. It'll happen over time. They also know that they will have an asset that they can sell. So if a developer or a real estate sales person comes along and is trying to assemble some property and the right offer is made, they may well be the sellers. You know, so they're not because they're going to build something, it doesn't tie them to the property forever. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that, you know.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments, and I'm going to let Councillor Waters speak. But I just want to say, first of all, everything that the staff told you through all that time was absolutely accurate. The difficulty is we were working through a process which is called an official plan amendment during the time that you were getting this information. And the official plan took, and I'm going to look to Mr. Kane, 3 years to go through, which included dozens of opportunities for pop-up meetings and information and strategic planning sessions with members of the public. We'd go out to events. I understand you lived elsewhere, so you probably weren't as aware, but all of this is going on in the background. So the official plan wasn't approved until November of 2018. So, and as you know, being a builder, that first you do an official plan, and then you do the zoning bylaw to match the official plan. So there's the rub. So what's happened is the official plan getting approved, which allows for and actually envisions 4 stories high. And I understand you understand what that means, but I can tell you, the sun would never shine on your property with a 4-story building built to the sidewalk all the way back. You know, I just want you to understand that that's the position it's in right now. That's the direction that the community, based on all the consultation that we did, and has decided that's what they want to see there. And that was only done in November, which means the zoning bylaw will now be brought up to capture. So that I totally feel for you. I see you are wonderful people, and the timing just couldn't be worse with the way the the process that we're going through versus the process that you are going through. And that is unfortunate. Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Just a quick question. Considering that this property also backs onto Hastings, is there an opportunity for, if the town was interested, to get first right of refusal on the sale of that property when they did sell it? So as they were saying, they may be there for 10, 15 years, that we get the first right of refusal, that we can then put that towards a development. I don't know if that's even possible or not, or even when we'd be interested.
The property on Hastings is my aunt's, my mom's sister.
Oh,
It's
I
my mom's-
apologize.
My mom's sister. It's still family.
It's family.
It's family, but it's my aunt.
So any other, Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just clarification, because you mentioned 5 years, I think. So the application that you have the blueprints into the town now, you've paid a deposit. When is it you're looking at building?
This summer.
This summer, okay. I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't a 5-year window that you're looking at.
We had a bit of a hiccup because the way the design is done, we have to go for a minor variance. We were hoping to do the minor variance and basically be through that process by July.
Okay.
And then start building right away.
Okay, 2019.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation as information. Councillor Feller and Councillor Orsatti, all those in favor? That's carried. And so when this item comes up on the agenda, if you want to stay around, stay tuned, and council will be debating and voting on it this evening.
Yes, thank you for your ears.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is reports of any municipal associations, county council, conservation authority, or committee updates. County council first, and that's Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I sat on my first meeting this week with the Grant Program Task Force. It's a $400,000 budget that is done by the county and is to help smaller groups that work with arts, culture, and heritage, natural environments, grant recommendations. So what's happened here is this money's been available, and when I went through it for the first time of seeing who the money was distributed to, a lot of the money was going to the northern half of the county, more Orillia, Midland, Penetang, Collingwood, and Innisfil's really never stepped forward a whole lot. There's only been 1 or 2 groups that have approached them, but nothing really major. So of the $400,000, they gave out just a little shy of the $400,000. But I think, and I spoke to them of the county to make it more aware to the residents of Innisfil, there's money there for arts, heritage, and culture. And that could be the Cookstown Heritage, that could be the Arts Council if we have it up and running. So I think we as a municipality and a county, we're going to reach out and try and bring more awareness so that we at the south end, we get a little bit of this money that's available. And I think the cap is $10,000. It's not, as long as it doesn't go for operations or capital, this money is available to help your organization. So I'm asking your councillors, when you have groups that approach you, contact the county, and there'll be some information coming forward, and I'll work forward to make sure your voice is heard, okay? Thank you.
Any other committees? Councillor Nichol?
Thank you, Worship. Just an update from the NVCA. Just want to let Council know that the NVCA has written letters to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forests, expressing the concerns over the funding cuts to the 50 million tree program as well as flood management program, which would actually increase the town's portion of the levy for the NVCA. I forwarded these letters off to staff, and they will be coming in correspondence to Council the next meeting and with the recommendation as well for support. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Waters?
Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority had their meeting on April 26th, and the same concern came forward as Councillor Nicol had just mentioned, and I am in full agreement that we should either be sending our own letter of support, because what it eventually comes down to is the province is undermining the flood mandate, which the Conservation Authority is supposed to do at a time when climate change is a real issue, and two, they're just downloading those costs onto us. Either we want them to do that work to protect our communities, or we don't, and we don't fund them. That means they can't do their job. So I think it's really important that we support them in this effort and move forward to support the letters going from the Nottawasaga and hopefully from Lake Simcoe as well. Just on a couple other issues, is the Conservation Authority is also going through what's called a Modernization of Conservation Authorities Act. They're going to be changing that over the next little while, and the Conservation Authorities have till May 24th, I believe, to respond to some of the changes that the province is requesting the Conservation Authority, and they will keep us informed because those changes will impact us here as well in terms of it could be further downloads or restriction of what the mandate of the Conservation Authority is. Last but not least, we had a presentation from Source Water Protection, the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection, and of which our Mayor Lynn Dolan is the chair of that. So I'm going to kind of bounce it back to you and ask you for a quick summary as opposed to me trying to summarize what you said.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. It was wonderful to visit both the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority and the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority in my role as chair of the Source Protection Committee and bring updates. We usually go to each conservation authority about twice a year to bring updates. The important issue that was brought forward this meeting was that it's been, believe it or not, 5 years since the approval of our Source Protection Plan. And we are required to bring to the minister an update on how we are doing in implementation. And so in order to do that, we need approval from both the authorities and the Severn Sound Environmental Association as well. And we're making satisfactory progress throughout the region. It's 52 municipalities, over 300 drinking water systems, definitely the largest in the province of Ontario. So we have some challenges. It's not timing-wise mostly to get the work completed by the time we need to get it completed, but we're making good progress, and we pointed out where we were having problems, and I can tell you that it wasn't in Innisfil. So thank you. That was an update on Source Protection 101.
Thank you for that. And also that your mandate comes to an end in August, and you may have the chance to sit on that committee again. So that would be helpful since you have the history to do it. So I hope that happens. One last item is that the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority is also undertaking in partnership with Toronto Region Conservation Authority, Credit Valley, and Freeman Associates and the Ministry of Environment, what's called the Stormwater Management Optimization Study. The budget was for about $1 million, of which they've managed to get all that money. And the end result is that in the end, what it will mean for Innisfil is that it will be better flood management and through stormwater management and optimization studies. So that looks good, and I was glad to see they were able to get $1 million in order to do this really serious, detailed study.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Fowler?
Yes, in regards to the pitching committee, we had our meeting earlier this week. Everything is going according to plan. We have all the supplies being delivered to the schools, which are actually apparently stepping out even earlier than the pitch-in day. We have many companies in the community just giving so much. It's amazing to see how much everyone's giving of themselves for this. And as well, we have with the early registration, we actually picked a winner. A gentleman by the name of Frank Marquez won a $100 iTunes gift card. So it just shows that when you put good energy into the world, you get it back.
Thank you. So I'll just add to that pitch-in day is this Saturday, May 11th, rain or shine. You can get your garbage bags and your gloves at your local fire hall when you sign up at 9 o'clock or anytime thereafter. And they also usually have some good coffee, strong coffee, and some goodies there as well. It's really important for all of council to make sure they get as many of their residents out as possible, because the resident or the ward who has the most residents participate will be the proud owner of the Golden Broom. It's a wonderful prize that you all will covet, so you want to make sure that you get lots of people out pitching in to help clean up our community on Saturday. Councillor Fowler?
Yes, we also cannot forget the barbecue at Centennial Park after the fact. We must make sure that everybody who does give of themselves, that they have full bellies at the end of the day.
Thank you. And Councillor Payne?
Thank you. I had the Accessibility Committee team. We had 2 very successful accessibility breaking down the barriers events. The first was held at Killarney Beach School with grades 4 and 5, and last week was at Holy Cross School, grades 5 and 6. And as busy as we were, it was a great feeling to see the children leave the different stations talking about what they learned and how they can make a difference with their grandparents. So it was really nice to see. This is a great learning program, and it shows the students that it's not easy living with a disability of any kind. So we have them with, they have the folders over the eyes so they can't see, so they have to find different items, and they have to use the cane. We have a hearing test, and we're finding that a lot of the kids are having issues with the lowest decibel, I guess they call it. And so we try to, explain to them that keep the music down when they're using the headphones, because that's the problem they're having. And I also attended the Heritage Committee last week, and we did have a request from an Innisfil Heritage property owner requesting that his property be put on the designation list, which is quite nice. It's showing that the residents care about the history of their town. And we also had a conversation again about the house on stilts. I think everybody knows which one that is, and that's the one on Innisfil Beach Road. And I did have a conversation with some of the staff, and that's being looked into with the developer. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to take too much of Council's time because I know that the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee is on the agenda. But for members of the public that are watching and that don't have an opportunity to read this, just to understand that the committee has created a ranking priority to work on Innisfil Beach Park. The top 3 items were 1, addressing the parking concerns and issues, 2, enforcement in the park, visible enforcement, and 3rd, reviewing and discussing ideas for a user pay. So we're starting discussion on that. And it's not something that can be, we're trying to get things in place for May 2-4 weekend, but every decision that council makes or a committee makes has a consequence, and especially for Innisfil Beach Park, and some things have already come to council. So they don't happen as quickly as what we would like or the public would like, but they are being worked on. We're trying to move them ahead as quickly as we can and making progress.
Thank you very much. Similarly with the Traffic Safety Committee, lots of work being done. The most difficult part there is managing expectations, where people come to say, yes, I want a stop sign here, or I want a traffic light there, and expect it to be installed the next day. Whereas in fact, these committees are advisory committees that come back to council for decisions. So it is a bit of a process, and bylaws have to be passed and so on, and that's been a bit of an issue. Our South Simcoe police officers who attended suggested that perhaps some of the committee attend one of the Bradford meetings to see how their traffic committee works and some of the traffic calming measures that they've used there. So certainly we're going to try to make that happen. So I guess this part of the agenda is lengthy, but the reason it's there is to show you that sitting here on Wednesday nights is just the tip of the iceberg, and every member of council belongs to different committees and associations, and it's a lot of work, and this is like the easy part, sitting here. It's all the other committees and everything that take up everyone's time, and I hope that council knows how much we appreciate all the extra effort that you put in. So we're going to go through the consent list, and this list will, anything that requires debate or further debate will be pulled to the committee of the whole. If everyone's happy with the staff recommendation and the way it's written, then we'll just move it right to approval at the end of the agenda. So the first item is the special council meeting dated, minutes dated April the 17th. The next item is A2, special council meeting dated April the 24th. Those special council minutes. The council minutes of our regular meeting dated April 24th. The special council meeting minutes dated April the 27th. That was our Saturday strategic planning session. B1. Reports of various committees. The first is the Pitch-In Working Committee. Second is a report about the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee. Sorry, Councillor Fowler? You want to pull that one? So B2 is being pulled. B3, the Innisfil Heritage Advisory Committee. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to pull it. I just want a little bit, when I was reading this, the minutes from the, March 7th, had a committee motion for consideration by council for an item that has been quite a few times before council for consideration of a planner, placemaker, and heritage architecture. And I noticed that in the recommendation, it was just that item 2 would be referred to council at a future date, but in the following meeting, it does say that planning staff will be attending the May meeting of the Heritage Committee regarding the heritage consultant, and I look forward to getting that information back to council at that time.
Thank you, Councillor. Next item is B4, the School Zone Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. Councillor Orsatti?
Refer.
There's no standard requests, so the next items are the staff reports. Staff report D1, part lot control exemption for Maple Lane. D2, the environmental sustainability policy. I did just have a couple of questions on that policy. I really think it is a good step in the right direction. A couple of my pet peeves, I'll give you. One of them is, I'll leave it down to one, is August long weekend on a Sunday afternoon when I come in here to get some extra work done and it's 40 below because the air conditioning's just blasting and I have to put a sweater on. So I'm just throwing that out there that things like, I love what we're doing, but we've got to walk the walk and talk the talk. Thanks. D3, the candidate equivalency policy. Councillor Fowler?
Refer.
D4, the Ontario Health Team staff report. Other than I really wish we could change the name. Instead of Berrien area, make it Berrien Innisfil. D5, the interim control bylaw. Councillor Van Berkel wants to pull that. D6, Innisfil Regional Training Center. Just a kudos to Chief Rayburn on this great work. This is, we tasked staff to look at ways to be more efficient and also to look at ways to generate revenue other than coming from the property taxpayer, and this does both. This would mean that when our own firefighters are trained, they don't have to be out of our community up in Gravenhurst to do that training. And it also means that we could invite other communities here and charge a fee for that training. So great work, great thinking out of the box, and I'm really pleased to be one of the communities offering this service. So thank you so much. Other bylaws, E1 is to appoint a number of bylaw officers. Councillor Fowler?
Refer.
E2, a bylaw to appoint more municipal law enforcement officers. E3, again, another appointment of municipal law enforcement officers. F, correspondence for action. The wingding, seeing none. Items for correspondence, G1, which is a memorandum from Amanda Collins regarding the cost of living adjustment for 2019. G2, a memorandum from Jody Longland regarding the Speak Your Mind Youth Mental Health Summit. Just wondering if we might, at our next meeting, have somebody from this team, or perhaps even after it's finished, have somebody from this team come and speak to council about this great initiative. And I'd ask clerks to pass on that information. Thank you. G3, the Manager of People and Talent. I just want to, again, not pull it, but advise that this is a summer grant program, and very thankful to Member of Parliament John Brassard for supplying us with a little over $100,000 that will go towards helping pay for summer students, co-op students, and summer camp program. And it's a program we've relied on for many years, and we're glad it's continuing. G4, proclamation of World Maternal Mental Health Day. I was pleased to attend their awareness walk last Saturday at Innisfil Beach Park. G5, proclaims and recognizes June as Rotary Month. And then we go into board and agenda correspondence. G6, health unit meeting updates. G7, more from the health unit regarding provincial funding cuts. G8, more from the health unit regarding the Muskoka opioid strategy. And G9, minutes of the Innisfil Public Library Board. H1, another supplementary item, which is to appoint another municipal law enforcement officer. We're going to have lots of municipal law enforcement officers. H2, Innisfil Pitch-In Working Committee Summary Report. H3, a new appointment to the tourism industry representing Innisfil Beach Park Committee. And H4, an application to apply for some Canada infrastructure funding for Raynor Court Laneway. All right, so we'll now go back and discuss the items that were referred. And I had B2, B4, D3, D5, E1, did I miss any? So while it's getting typed, can I ask for a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Van Berkel, seconded by Councillor Payne. Do you want us to wait till it's on the screen, Mr. Clerk? There we are. All those in favor? That's carried. So item B2 was Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. I was looking at the minutes and...
We have a mover and a seconder first, Councillor.
Sorry.
Moved by yourself and seconded by Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Under one of the bulletin points, it says the committee advised the next priority to be considered as a user pay system. I'm getting a lot of questions in regards to, are we referring to user pay system for out-of-towners versus residents? Or I'm not able to answer them correctly, so I'm looking for clarification on the matter.
Councillor Orsatti is chair of that committee.
Happy to answer that for you. That is for non-residents. So.
And I'd just like to point out too that, you know, there still will be future discussion. We don't know where that will land. That's not written in stone. It will be here. This council will make that decision, but we'll certainly be looking at the advice from this committee when it comes forward. Councillor Waters.
Also mentioned too that we did request the staff to do to set up a study that would study what the existing patterns are now, so it helps us to make an informed decision when it comes to that later on.
And just to manage expectations again, that would not be in place for 2019. So all in favor of B2 as written in the agenda? That's carried. Next item is B4, and that was Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bill Van Berkel. This is a lengthy document and maybe a little confusing to some, that as a vice chair of this committee, I'm referring it, and some recommendations. I may go back to the committee and find I have just been moved from my position. So two things I want to point out on this document is that Webster Boulevard is determined as a main arterial road. Engineering and Carolina gave the committee a very lengthy document on the town's traffic safety policy, calming policy. And we use that throughout the committee. But it does say in the document, and there is some tables, and it can be a little confusing going back and forth. There is a recommendation on the two recommendations for Webster Boulevard. One is for a stop at Robbins Gate and also at Mill Street, and also for stop controls on suggestion of Hunter up further on Mill Street or Butler. Staff's recommendation to the committee was that the top portion of Webster, because it's an unassumed road, should go back to engineering. So I have a question to engineering. What is the process and how is this handled if it's an unassumed road in trying to address this? And I wonder if Ms. Jenkins would be able to help us out with that.
Ms. Jenkins?
Through your worship to Councillor Orsatti, yes. So typically when these developments get approved, they have to submit a traffic impact study that looks at all of these things. However, we have already taken measures to bring this to the developer, to their attention. And so I know Scott McKenzie has had some discussions with them about it. And so we'd be happy to continue those discussions and see if we can come up with a solution for the issues that have been identified. If they are warranted. So even though it is not assumed, we can still work with the developer to some degree. So that would be the process that we would be looking at doing for this.
Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you. And follow up on that, also on the April 26th, the committee received a memo from staff concerning the stop sign requests for the potential traffic calming for Webster Mill Street and Webster and Robbins Court and Webster, and that staff will identify an appropriate pedestrian crossing location for Webster Boulevard, as opposed to in the document that council's received on the table. I believe, I'm just going to try and go to that table. It says it's not warranted. So I just wanted to draw attention to council that although it says in the table from the, trying to find the first minutes, first table, which is the little blurry one. Sorry, just trying to get to that. Bear with me. Let me see. Webster Boulevard and a lot of tables. Sorry, I can't find it just at the moment.
So, Councillor, can I help? So, sure. I think what you're trying to say is the staff are saying it's not warranted, but the committee is recommending that they go back and look at it another time.
Correct. Yes. The second item, so I just wanted to make
Sure.
council aware of that, and also for people watching that, you know, although staff may make a recommendation based on, you know, their experience in that, we feel that it warrants a little bit further investigation. Also, on that, the item that is, there was an item and we had a delegation in the last meeting in regards to St. John's Side Road and the 7th line. There was a request to have a stop sign, four-way stop sign put there, and it was determined that it was not warranted by staff, and that the recommendation by staff was to cut back on the brush. And I, as a councillor for that ward, and if experiencing the complaints and concerns, and even trying to, residents trying to go east and west, and the bend in that road, I'm not satisfied with the recommendation. I would like to make an amendment to this committee that a four-way stop sign be installed at the corner of St. John's and the 7th line. And this is seconded by Councillor Bill Van Berkel.
So can I just clarify that what was the direction, what was the recommendation that the committee gave on that item?
The recommendation of the committee was based on the feedback from staff, and that, let me just pull that up. I have it highlighted. Stop sign St. John's, no change recommended, does not meet or warrant for an all-way stop. But since this time, we've had another accident at that intersection that they had to close the whole intersection. And if you're trying to, it may say that it's not warranted by the traffic volume numbers that staff use because they go by a policy. I'm just saying that from resident concerns, and it also that in the policy that the town has for these roads, it says that to provide safe route for people to walk and bike, and it's not a safe intersection to do either one of those things, let alone traffic trying to come out from the 7th line east of St. John's.
Councillor Waters.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the traffic rules that they use are only guidelines, and that we can change that at any time we want. So if it's an issue, you know, we can take their recommendation, but we can also overturn that and do what we wish to do.
Ms. Jenkins?
Through your worship, just to provide a bit of clarification on that intersection. So that intersection has been looked at as part of the EA process for the 7th line improvements that we currently have underway. And so our consultant did take a close look at that intersection from a traffic safety and standards perspective. And that's where that advice came from, that it wasn't warranted. And instead of putting in an always stop to cut the brush back for better visibility. So that is what the plan is in the design at this point. So, that we did have, engineering detailed look at this intersection in case there's any question about that.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I had a situation like this on an intersection, 30th Side Road in Big Bay Point 14 years ago. And I came before this council and we managed to get a stop sign, a 4-way stop put in under a category of a community calming zone. And we didn't have the traffic that we did meet the numbers because of the location, but the way the corner was designed was inefficient. And so there is an area that you can go as a community calming zone, and council has that authority to move that forward. And if you feel that's necessary, then bring it forward and we'll take a vote.
I'm going to start, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Rayner to break in. But so I'm not sure that, and Jessica can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure that the issue is it has to meet a certain standard of a volume of traffic. I thought with a 4-way stop, the issue was that the traffic had to be fairly even. So the traffic going east-west and the traffic going north-south was within a reasonable amount similar versus one going, one having like 90% of the traffic and one having 10% of the traffic. But I will, I'll go to Mr. Rayner and then I'll go back to Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I just wonder if the interest of council is to make a decision, to address this specific intersection. I wonder if what you're really asking is inviting a staff report or directing us to bring back a staff report, because I think not all members of council are in fact members of TSAC, so a number of you have addressed this matter and have discussed it with staff, but I'm just not sure if the rest of council would be comfortable making a decision on introducing a stop sign without that background or without having a report from engineering. It's entirely in council's hands, but certainly staff would be prepared to do that. And then I'm going to contradict myself and say, the only problem is that part of the reason you created the committee is so that you don't have these kinds of reports and issues coming to the council, which of course is entirely your prerogative. But part of the issue was to have the committee address these things rather than have them at council. So you may be setting a precedent if you start, I'll call it cherry picking particular issues to bring back to council, but that's your prerogative as council. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think one of the problems there is there's no stop sign from, I guess it's Innisfil Beach Road right down to Ewart Street, 4-way. And it's all been repaved, very nice, and it's a racetrack. And I think what people are looking for is to slow the traffic down more than anything, and that's sort of the halfway point. If we had, a 4-way stop there, and I sat there with this gentleman that made the deputation the other day at the committee, and he's right. He's totally right. I mean, they're going through there 80, 90 kilometers an hour. You need something there to slow them down. And I think that being the half point from St. John's all the way down Maple Road to Ewart Street, that would, slow them down quite a bit if there was a stop sign there. And that's, I think, what we're looking for.
Thank you. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Your Worship. For myself to be able to make an educated decision on this item, I tend to agree with Mr. Rayner that I would like a little more information on staff as to why they just recommended not to do that before we as council overrule that. That would be my comment.
Councillor Nicol?
Thank you, Worship. I tend to agree with Councillor Ices as well, too. You know, my understanding is provincial policy sets what warrants for stop signs, four-way stops. I think we've dealt with it in every one of our communities. So by all means, if there's an opportunity or if members are looking for more information on this four-way stop or trying to get a four-way stop, and then I would suggest that it would go back to staff to come back with a report for all of council to have all of the information rather than just trying to make a quick decision on one item in one recommendation. So I think that would be a better way to go.
Councillor Orsatti?
I'd be willing to change that to recommend that staff report back to council on the request of a four-way stop at the intersection of St. John's and 7th line, so that all of council will have the background information besides buried in these reports. Thank you.
Thank you. There's nobody who gets more frustrated over the uniform traffic manual than I do. I can tell you that right off the bat. My issue is that I would prefer we send it back and say, we're not satisfied with just cutting back the brush. What should we be doing to make this intersection safer? As opposed to saying, four-way stop, that's it. Great regard for the gentleman who made the delegation, but he's not a traffic engineer. And there might be a way to fix this that would make it safer than us cherry picking a way to fix it just because that was what was recommended. There might be 6 different ways to make this safer, and we're only asking staff to look at one of those 6 ways. So I wondered if the mover and seconder would consider a friendly amendment to say report back to councillor on a way to make it safer that's more than just cutting back the brush. Is that okay? The issue with us, and I agree, so if we're going to change the provincial guidelines and make them Innisfil guidelines, I think it's incumbent upon us to tell staff what those guidelines are, and then everybody's in that same boat. If we start putting a stop sign or a speed bump or anything else because we get a delegation, then we could end up with a real mishmash. And I've said it before to the Traffic Safety Committee, but I'll say it here. We've made decisions like that in the past that have made things more unsafe than made them safe. And I believe Councillor Van Berkel was on council when we put a PXO, a signal crossing in front of Killarney Beach School. The traffic manual told us not to do that, to put it at the intersection. The school really wanted it right at the school. We put it there. When we put it there, there was a stop sign right after it, and it was odd to have a stop sign right after a green light, and it ended up creating more accidents at that corner than it did fixing them. So we've got a lot of work to do. We're just getting started.